Welcome to Self-Love and Sweat, the podcast, the place where you'll get inspired to live your life unapologetically, embrace your perfect imperfections, and do what sets your soul on fire. I'm your host, Lunden Souza. Hey, before we jump into this episode, I just want to make sure that you get all the free things possible. If you haven't already, you need to get your Self-Love and Sweat free monthly life coaching calendar. Honestly, the way to experience deep change in your life is by doing small little things over time. And so that's what you'll find in this free calendar. You can get it by going to lifelikeLondon.com/calendar. Get yours for free, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Jenn Reno that I get to that you guys have the pleasure of listening to, but I also feel like as the host or whatever that means of this podcast, I always get to have the honor of just connecting with some of the most beautiful, amazing people ever. And I met Jenn kind of recently, but I just immediately, fell in love with her. And I'm so excited to have a conversation with you today, Jenn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
How I kind of want to start this is a couple weeks ago, I recorded an episode about reflections on my 36th birthday. And that episode was really like a no plan, I like to call it. Like I just was like, whatever, I just know I want to reflect and I'm just going to press record and go. And I remember afterwards thinking like, did that even make sense? Like, I don't even know if I said anything clearly, cohesively, like whatever. And I don't really generally go back and listen to episodes, like just, like I do sometimes, but it's more just like press record, put it out there. But I went back and listened and I was like, oh, actually, I kind of did make sense. Like I kind of, did kind of pull it together. And you called and left me a voicemail just sharing about how the part that I mentioned about being messy and being able to do what we do despite the mess or while we're in the mess, and we can be messy. And so Jenn called me and left me a voicemail just affirming my mess, and it felt so good. And I felt so seen and heard, and I just love you. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to be here on the podcast. I'm so grateful that I met you, and I'm so grateful for your reflections that you also shared with me about your mess and insecurities a little bit around the mess and all of that. So thank you for you.
I mean, I just can't even tell you how much you've helped my life so far. And it hasn't been a long time that I've known you, but it feels like it's been years, just like if it's communication, I did your course and it really had me like the self-proclaimed, like I've been in therapy my whole life person, was like, oh shoot, like I really need to take some steps back and look at the way I communicate. And then, what you shared about, the mess, and it's like, we're all in and out of that mess. And that's really what we have to do. And it feels like in the line of work that we're both in, of like wellness, self-help, raising your vibration. It's like, you feel like you should always be up here and just succeeding and thriving and never making mistakes. And it's not possible. Like it's not possible. And it's really, that's like where the growth happens, right? Is when we allow ourselves to be in that mess, kind of sort the mess, like, okay, this is working for me. This is working. This is not working for me. And while I feel like it's safe and I need to hold on to it, I need to let it go because it's not helping, So sorting through that mess and having, your soul family around you to support in that time is so important. And then you come out and you're like, oh, I'm back.
I'm back. Yeah, sorting through the mess. That's what I was thinking when you were talking and then you said it. Sorting through the mess, being able to sit in it, understand it a little bit, but choosing not to stay there.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about you and what you do and who you are in this world.
Um, I mean, it's like, where do you even start? So much of who I am is because of where I grew up. I grew up in what I believe is one of the most beautiful places in the world, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I'm like a nature nerd from the get go. Being outside in nature has always been very important to me and has been a lot of my purpose in my life, of whether it's purpose and what brought me happiness was camping and snowboarding and climbing and fly fishing, growing up on the river, to going to college for conservation biology and wanting to fight to save these beautiful places. And so I always go back to like, man, like growing up there really imprinted so much of who I am today. And every time I go back there, it's just like a big, like, this is my home. I am now a mama. I have a 4-year-old. I am a meditation teacher, a light worker, sound healer. And really have found all of these things because of my own struggles. And, we talked about the like turning pain into purpose. And I never meant to become a teacher of any of this. I really was just trying to find relief within my own existence, and then became a teacher and a healer. And I just feel like what I found, this like relief and this magic, and the people who are attracted to this world, it saved my life. And I want to share it with anybody who wants to make a change in their life, whether it's just with work or a relationship or really deep soul searching. I know it's like a wellspring of hope and relief to get into this world. And it makes me a better mom, a better partner, a better friend. And I'm constantly learning because I'm surrounded with people like you, and our NABA family. So many perspectives. It's like when you think you know exactly who you are or what you want, you hear something out of somebody else's mouth that maybe you've heard before, but it just wasn't the right person. And you're like, oh, wait, I want that too. That sounds like a really good, beautiful thing to add to my life. And I want to learn all about it. So I feel like I'm constantly a student. I want to keep evolving, and just kind of showing up as much as I can, right? Because like we said, we have these periods in our life, and I've had quite a life of health issues, with a genetic disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I've had over 20 surgeries. I have been brought back from the other side. I have been in hospital beds for many months of my life. I have had brain leaks, all these things. And it's like the people who have come into my life because of all of these, some of them were pretty horrific experiences. Like I can't believe how lucky I am that I found the people I did, and I wouldn't have if it weren't for this disease, this disorder. And so, while I was really just trying to find my way out of chronic pain and all these things, I found a lot of magic. And I feel like that's a lot of information.
But you said showing up and wanting to continue to show up. And you just so like casually it rolls off the tongue, like 20 surgeries, I guess a near-death experience, or maybe you did die. I'm not sure. I don't know that part of your story. And being in chronic pain and still showing up. Like, how does one do that? How do you wake up and, be a mom to your beautiful daughter, who I love? I haven't met her in person yet, but I call her my bestie because I know that the second I
Yes.
get to meet her, we're going to be
Yes.
besties for life. It's already written. But how do you show up being someone who experiences chronic pain and still see that magic?
Well, there's been many seasons in my life where I couldn't show up, like literally couldn't walk to go to the bathroom, would have to army crawl. Like I couldn't show up at all. And it's been a long time since I started meditating, actually, is when like everything shifted for me, because I really was living in constant fear of like what surgery was going to be next. There's a lot of information that's coming out about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So like, if you haven't heard of it yet, you will start to meet people or read about it in the news. But for a long time, it was just kind of like, doctors wouldn't listen to me. I didn't get diagnosed until I was in my 30s, so it was a lot of like, oh, you're just too active, or you need to work out more. And I'm like, I'm a personal trainer. Like I live in the gym, not feeling heard for a really long time and just being told that it wasn't that bad, even though I needed surgeries and they were always having to operate. And so I just like shut down for a long, long time. And then I wouldn't even go to the doctor for pretty serious things. And by the time I would go, they would be like, why didn't you come sooner? And it's like, well, because every time I come, you basically tell me nothing's wrong with me. Or that it's like a trending thing to have, where when all I wanted was a diagnosis so I could like figure out how to live better. And so, yeah, there's a lot of times where I just really was in a dark place. I had suicidal ideations with chronic pain. I felt very isolated and alone for so long. And I've been in those periods off and on where it's like, I feel so guilty because I am like, a white woman with a lot of privilege and access to see whoever I want almost, and I have great friends and family and an awesome partner, but I didn't ever want to be a burden. And that really also stems from like childhood stuff. My mom, where basic needs were often a burden. And I never want to be that person. I want to be the person showing up and like helping you. And then seriously, within 4 days of starting meditation, like an actual practice of like 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, bookends, on the 4th day of that, my whole life changed. And I've never gone back. So like, while I wake up and I have, a few weeks ago, I was in bed because my lower back is starting to hurt again and my hip, and I get Harper out the door. Like there's things I have to do and that need to get done. But then I come and lay in bed, for 6 hours or go sit in my sauna or whatever it is that I need to do. But really, since meditation, I've never gotten back to that place of such complete fear. I'm more in a like, okay, if something hurts and I might need another surgery, I'm like, okay, great. Like I'm going to do everything I can before that surgery to prepare for it. I always train for surgeries, body allowing, like I did when I was a competitive snowboarder. I want to be as strong as I can. I need my body to be, detoxed and clean. And a lot of meditation and work around that, and going into surgery with, nervous system down. And I just know that I'm taken care of. And as long as I have my breath, I'm okay. But, there are days when I want to set my hair on fire when I'm trying to parent a toddler. But I'm breaking that generational trauma between mothers and daughters. Like I'm not going to make my daughter feel like a burden because she's 4 years old and is a kiddo and has her needs. Like, she needs me. And so it's my responsibility to do everything I can um, to not snap. Because I was getting there at one point, and I immediately was like, okay, I need to go back to therapy. I started microdosing. Again, this is like a very first world thing where I had a friend who gave me really good advice. She was a client turned one of my best friends now. If like there was anything that was causing stress between Eric and I that money could fix, do it. And if you have it, and that was for me calling a babysitter more often and taking time to go cold plunge and sauna and, self-care. So while life with chronic pain and parenting like don't really go hand in hand together, it's my responsibility to take care of myself. And just like it is, like, even if before I had Harper, to be a better parent or a better partner, a better friend, like to do as much as I can. And sometimes the best that I could do was lay in bed and just maybe text a friend. And sometimes also asking friends for help because friends like to help,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Meditation. I love what you said about that fourth session. Not that for everybody it's that, but I'm also thinking too, like you're going to all these doctors, they're discovering more about, your diagnosis and all those things. I wasn't at these doctor's appointments with you, but I'm probably certain that they weren't prescribing meditation and breath, right? But how did you discover this practice and these bookends? Like, what were you actually doing? I mean, I know I meditate, I know what that is, but for those listening, like, sometimes people are like, well, I can't quiet my mind or I can't sit there. And how do you meditate? What did those bookends look like? What were
So,
you doing?
yeah, no doctors were giving me any advice on what to do. There is, prescribing medications and things like that. But my neurosurgeon, actually, I had my first spine surgery about 12 years ago. And within that spine surgery, I got a brain leak and then had to be in the hospital and was so drugged up. I was like in like a drug induced coma state, breathing on my own, but remember nothing because they had to get a team of doctors, of neurosurgeons together to figure out how to operate on this brain leak that I had. They didn't know where it was located. They're calling my family, somebody needs to get out to California. And when I woke up from this surgery, I can't remember if it was my neurosurgeon or one of the doctors saying, you might find yourself having a really hard time after this surgery because while you don't remember any of what happened this last week, your body does.
Mm.
And I didn't know what they meant. And I was also just 2 years clean too. So like all my other surgeries, I would drink and do drugs after because painkillers made me so sick. And I was also just a drug addict. So there was that. But so this was also my first surgery clean. So I didn't have any of those things. I was in a neck brace, which felt very scary. And all of a sudden I started having panic attacks and like hyperventilating. And I would just be on a walk with my dog and I would be like a mess on the side of the road. And my neurosurgeon was like, do you paint? And I was like, I don't really know how. And he goes, go get an easel and some paint and like, let's start tapping into that part of the brain when you go into these moments or before that happens. And so I started painting a lot and loving that and finding like some calm in that. And then I needed a second surgery not long after that on my spine. And I was in so much pain and I was so angry and frustrated. And before that, I had had 5 shoulder reconstructions, a full hip reconstruction in between the 2 spine surgeries, 3 knee surgeries, a full ankle surgery, appendectomy. Like I had all these joints operated on, but I didn't really understand the spine and its like that how spine pain really affects your emotional stability. So I'm in my neurosurgeon's office and I'm crying and I'm cussing, and he's like looking at the x-ray and he's like, I see what's wrong. Your neck isn't broken. You're not going to die. You do need surgery, but I will not operate on you when you are this heightened. Your surgery, your recovery will be so much harder. And he told me I needed to see the pain psychologist, which in my mind was, again, somebody saying, it's not that bad. This pain isn't real. Like, go see a shrink. And you need to meditate. And I told him to fuck off. I slammed the door, said, fuck you. And I went back with my tail between my legs and agreed to see the pain psychologist, and didn't meditate for like 12 years later, 6 years later, 7 years later, I guess. I still talk to that pain psychologist to this day. And it really was, after 5 more spine surgeries throughout the years, I really injured my neck really horribly and was given the gift of desperation, basically. I had started meditating a little bit with the Insight timer, and I had a spine surgery, and then I got another brain leak. This one wasn't as bad, so I wasn't unconscious, but I had to lay completely flat in the hospital for a week before the next surgery. I typed in pain and the topics for you can, type in whatever you're going through on Insight, and it will fill your feed with different meditations or Dharma talks and things that go along with that. And this teacher, David G., popped up, and he had a meditation on the body's ability to heal and repair itself. I listened to that probably thousands of times in the following months, like right before surgery that morning, immediately after, and for the months following, probably 3 times a day. And the mantras, just everything resonated so much with me, but I was still kind of just crisis meditating, right? Because I was in so much pain and I was miserable, but like I was desperate. And then I was scrolling on Instagram months later, because I wasn't able to work for over a year after that surgery, that a studio in Los Angeles was doing a teacher training with David G. And I had been attending some live meditations too in Venice, but again, it was just like, oh, I'm free tonight, I'll go to one, but not establishing like a real practice. And I was like, this could be really good for me to, I just wanted to learn more about meditation, like what it really was and all the different techniques and styles and things, and to deepen my practice. And so I did this teacher training with David G., and it was 6 weeks, like 200 hours. And we had to meditate twice a day, every day, the entire time. And we did it through the Unplugged meditation app, which I'm now on with healing meditations. Every meditation we listened to was a different teacher, a different style, different techniques. You find your people with the voice you like, or, guided visualizations, mantra meditations, all these different things. So you are experiencing the whole spectrum of meditation, probably outside of TM. And on the 4th day, I realized I hadn't taken a painkiller in 3 days. Hadn't even thought about them. I was sitting at a coffee shop studying in Venice, and I was like, whoa, like it blew my mind, because I was just recovering from this huge spine surgery. I was still in a lot of pain. I took those things, a couple times a day. I checked in with my body, and I was like, I hurt, but I could just be with it. And that's like how I am now. It's like pain comes, but I'm not afraid of it anymore either. Like I'm not afraid of it. I'm not going to say that I don't cry and get angry, that it's there sometimes or holding me back from doing something I want, but I'm not afraid of it like I used to be. And I was also just afraid of the world. Like when I grew up in a really not great home with my mom when I was little. She was a lovely person, beautiful, but she was very sick and a lot of childhood abuse. And, that followed into my choices as an adult in relationships too, of like that pretty textbook. I engaged to a drink to die alcoholic who was abusive, just like my mother. Um, so I was afraid of the world and I didn't know how to make very good decisions. And I was also just a person who felt safe, right? We're talking about that mess we're sorting through where you're like, oh, I should get rid of this, but it feels safe to keep it. I
Mm-hmm.
felt safer with the extremes of things are really good or really bad. But if things are just like right here and mellow and like floating along, that was really uncomfortable for me. And I would do things to sabotage that, whether it was a relationship or maybe a job, usually relationships. um, if somebody was like actually really good for me and I was like, oh, can't have that, like,
Too
uh,
safe, too good.
yep. So once with meditation, on that, after that fourth day, it was like, they say it's not always what happens in the meditation, but what happens outside of it, right? Like, what is your world like afterwards? And it really was like, it was like a movie. I feel like all of a sudden I could just like walk around like the streets and I'd be like, oh, the flowers and like bluebirds and things, and my anxiety changed. I used to carry around Klonopin or Xanax as well just in case. Like I always knew it was by me if I needed it. And it's like all of a sudden my anxiety, I tell this to a lot of clients now because it really helped me. And I do this with my pain as well. So when COVID started, I got a lot more clients, right? Virtual meditation clients all over the world. And it was like teaching them to talk to their meditate or to their anxiety like you would a little kid, right? When a little kid falls and scraped their knees, you're like, oh, that hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, you fell and you scraped it, and that's a hard thing to fall on. And yeah, that does hurt, like for me, I'm not going to be like, oh, it's not that bad, get up. It's like, okay, let's talk about what happened and look at where we are and then, kind of take care of it and then move on from there. So with anxiety, I could tell people during the pandemic of like, well, of course you have anxiety. Like none of us have lived through a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
This is new. Like you should have anxiety and it's okay. It's there. And so while some people, it took a lot longer than others to kind of adopt that practice, I do that I really like rarely get anxiety anymore. But if my neck is hurting in the middle of the night, I'm like, yeah, your neck should hurt. Even though you're a year and a half out of your last surgery, you could still be healing. You have a lot of titanium in there that it's not normal. Like this is a foreign object in your body. Like I just talk to it and it kind of like it dissipates. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so whenever there's something with, anxiety too, I'm like, yeah, you should feel anxious. Like you've never been a mother to a toddler during a, the state of where we are, you want to protect her. And so it's just weird. Like it's wild. And it is truly what everybody said it was, right? But I was like, no, I'm just like an athlete. Like I can't meditate. I don't meditate. It's like I I wish I would have had it as a child. I would love to know what I would have been like if I had a meditation practice as a child. Like, what would I look like as an adult, right? Like, what could I have saved myself from, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's like, everybody I meet too, like when they talk to me about what I do and they're like, oh yeah, I should probably meditate, but I can't. And I'm like, you can. You can.
Especially thinking about the version of you that told the doctor to fuck off. And then years later, getting to that first meditation, of course, your response now is like, oh, trust me, you can. But let's get to that moment from fuck off, doctor, all the way leading up to that moment you decided to meditate for the first time. What happened? Did you just decide, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to try it. What do I have to lose? Or like,
I think I'm trying to remember exactly why. It was around a new year coming up, and I told my partner, I said my New Year's resolution, which I don't really make resolutions usually, but I was like, is gonna be to meditate. And I'm like, and I'm serious, I need to like join a group so I'm there with people and like have somewhat of like accountability to be there. And because, you know, even now, like as much as I talk about I love meditation, there's often where I'm like, I'd rather just kind of sit on the couch and watch a show right now before I have to pick up work from school. Like I'd kind of, you know, like I could always find 27 other things to do before that. But I know I'm going to feel better after that rather than sitting. I mean, while I do love to sit on the couch and watch
both
some
and.
trashy
Yep.
TV. But so just literally 30 minutes after I told him I wanted to join a meditation group, we were on a walk in Venice, and they're on a building, on this white building. It said meditate in black, huge. And I was like, what the fuck is that? It was new because we walk that street all the time. And I run across the street and mush my face up against the window of whatever business this is. They weren't open yet. And they had literally they were just putting it all together. And as soon as they opened, I went to my first meditation. And my teacher, Peter Opperman, he's this lovely man. And it was a future self meditation. So for years, doctors told me, like, you probably shouldn't even try to carry a pregnancy. Your body's not going to allow it. And I had always wanted to be a mom. And in this future self meditation, and I think also they told us, like really guided us on your breath and that you're supposed to have thoughts and things like that. Where years before, I thought you had to be free and clear of all thoughts. Like I thought was just going to be thinking about nothing. And I never asked questions too, right? Like I had way too much ego to be like, how do you meditate? Like, what is it even really? And now I'm like, it's breathing. Truly, it's breathing. But I didn't know that. And so once I asked questions and I found the right teacher, I'm guided in this meditation and I meet my future self. I have a kid on my hip. At the time, I was in Ayurvedic medical school. I see all my Ayurvedic herbs in the corner of my kitchen. My thing was I always wanted a house with a lemon tree, which I now have, and a daughter. And and so at the end of the meditation, I was like, can I work with you privately? Like, you're going to change my life. And so I started doing private sessions with him a little bit, not twice a day. And he's the one who told me about Insight Timer. Like, hey, I suggest you do this on your own. And I worked with him. I was having a spine surgery and I worked with him like all the days leading up to it. And as soon as I got out of the hospital, worked with him. And but I still was kind of in crisis meditation mode. But literally a sign in the sky that said meditate, it was perfect. And that place really, I ended up teaching there after I got certified. It's where I really studied Reiki healing as well. And again, I never intended to be a Reiki healer. I just wanted to understand my existence in the world, like how I could exist more comfortably in the world. Once I stopped doing drugs and I got clean, I started to notice how sensitive to other people I am. I mean, even like you can see, like I blush really easily. And like when I'm in conversations that I'm so excited about, I'd be around a crowd of people and I'd be shaking. And I was like, oh, this is why I did drugs so much. Like I couldn't go to a concert without doing drugs and numbing out, So I studied Reiki just to help myself and to, I always thought something was wrong with me. I didn't understand myself at all. And really through Reiki and meditation and sound, I have come to understand a lot more about myself. I've had many different purposes so far in my 42 years. I've had many different existences as well. Um, but this one I feel like is like the best shift for like a higher good.
Mm. Oh, I feel like I'm like sweaty and have goosebumps from listening to your story, from listening to your story and how freaking incredible that is of literally a street you walk past all the time. Meditation was something that was always going to find you, that you were going to find. And then boom, right outside, a place you pass all the time is meditate. And that's where, you're supposed to be. And I got a chance to meditate with you on Thanksgiving. You hosted a virtual meditation for those in our NAVA community. And I had sent some text to people like, hey, come in. And, if you're not doing anything this morning and you have some time. And I enjoyed it so much. And it was so beautiful. And your voice is like it's so great. And it's so interesting to hear that journey of where you've been and where you are now and being able to experience you now as you also probably are. Like, I'm grateful for all those versions and all the things that you needed to go through in order to be exactly where you're at now. Do you still feel like a burden? Do you have that voice that's still, I'm sure the volume is a little bit turned down on it compared to maybe before, but like, there's
Yeah.
somebody listening who feels like a burden too. I can guarantee it. So like,
Oh, yeah.
what's
I
that
mean,
like?
it's, you know, I, so my parents were divorced and my life with my dad was like amazing. He's been sober since I was 2 years old, very emotionally intelligent man. Um, and, he provided in ways that I could do gymnastics, I could compete in snowboarding and travel and, do these things and not be scared to go home at night. And then with my mom, it was like food stamps, cops, um, being in a couple drunk driving accidents with her where the cars were totaled and being scared walking down the road off the bus with my brother every day, not knowing what we're going to come home to. And so when I made the decision at 10 and I moved and lived with my dad permanently in Jackson Hole, I didn't feel like I should complain because my life then and there was great and I was really well taken care of. But I was like, who am I to complain? Like, I'm okay. And I feel like I still kind of carry that sometimes. And um, of being like a white woman who has access to healthcare, when I have friends who live in other states that maybe don't have like all the holistic healing I've been able to, like, whether it's acupuncture or like the opportunity to microdose and do these things, it's like it's a weird dichotomy. Like, I feel like a burden, but I'm like, oh God, I'm so lucky though. Like, I'm so blessed. Um, and it's been a lot for my family. It's been a lot for my dad. All those unresolved childhood traumas caught up with me. When I was 20, I had to go to rehab for anorexia. And, that was scary. I was put in Stanford cardiology department with fear of heart failure. There's a lot of stress. And then I didn't finish everything there I should have. And then, I really kept pushing those things that I grew up with in. Um, and I never wanted to speak badly about my mom either because I felt really sad for her. And the older I got and started to understand mental illness more, which when I was 6 and 7, had no idea what was going on other than I was like incredibly scared all the time or like had the best mom in the world. Like, it was back and forth. But I carried all of that stuff then into drugs and alcohol. And yeah, I really, I overdosed. I tried to kill myself. I put my family through a lot. And then that stuff on top of all the surgeries, the calls, hey, we need family members to be here to make decisions while your daughter's unconscious before we do this next surgery for a brain. It's been a lot. And so while my dad has never, ever once made me feel guilty, he would probably like me to complain more. Um, yeah, I know that I'm worthy of having help. And, but yeah, it's hard. Often Eric needs to kind of like step in and be like, what do you need? And that's something that I need to continue to work on, and is in my communication, and to be a better version of myself is asking for help rather than or complaining even. I know I do all the things to try to feel my best, and so if I weren't doing anything to feel better and then complaining on top of that, like, there's nothing I hate more than when people do that.
Do
um,
nothing and complain about everything.
yeah, that's like something I have to work on, of my tolerance, because I'm just like I'll try anything, help me. Like how I was with drugs, basically, right? Like if one is good, 10 are better. Like I'm like that with with wellness. I'm like, ooh, what is it? Tell me more. What does it feel like?
Yeah.
Like
Much a
how
healthier version.
my
Yeah.
life. So yeah. But like as far as being a burden, I think I always want to be a good example for Harper, for my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and to feel seen and heard if she's having feelings or if she hurt herself. And if she needs help, I want her to feel safe in asking for help when she needs it, and that it's not
Mm-hmm.
a burden. And so, I need to lead by example in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Be the
and so,
model for her, and being
mhm.
someone, yeah, who grew up with, yeah, a dad who was a coach, where it was like, quit your crying, find a way, suck it up. I have a great relationship with my dad. I love him. We have so much fun together. And that was the nature of how I grew up. Like, I often will joke with him and be like, yeah, I wasn't a 16-year-old baseball player that needed, a little pump up to get up to bat and serve. I was like a little girl. And one
Yeah.
of my favorite videos ever that you've sent me, because sometimes Jen will send me videos of Harper, little messages. There was one where she was laying on the ground and you had crystals on her and she was breathing, and you could just tell, like, you know, that's her normal. Like, that's just like what you do. And she knows how to connect with her breath, and you get to have those fun moments. But I remember watching that video so many times. In fact, I hope I still have it. I probably do in our scroll history, but you said she's 4, right? And like, how are you now? I know you said before, you're like, I wonder what my life would be like if I had meditation at that age. Well, obviously you're now breaking that pattern and providing that for Harper, which is so beautiful. And that's one of my favorite videos of her ever. I was just like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah,
what
it's
a
like
lucky girl, what a lucky child to choose you as a mom, And so, like, what's that dialogue like with the 4-year-old of what it's like to connect with your breath? Also, like, does she see mommy in pain and have questions about those things? Like, what's the conversation with your child, with Harper, like?
So since having her, I've had one spine surgery about a year and a half ago. And so what happens is my spine dislocates. So my neck dislocates, and then I like rupture discs and do things. And so it happened very suddenly. And for the couple months after that, I was in bed. I couldn't take her to the park. I couldn't do anything with her. And then I had surgery, and then I wasn't allowed to pick her up for, I think, 8 weeks, maybe 3 months. Again, just in bed, couldn't be anywhere with her. But she was so sweet, and she still is, because my neck is very painful these days, and just something I'm, kind of dealing with again. But she'll be like, if she asks me to pick her up, I'll hold her, and then she cups the front and the back of my neck like my neck brace does, and she's like, I'll hold your neck for you, mama. Or sometimes when she wants alone time with her dad, she'll be like, Mommy, why don't you go get an ice pack and go rest your neck upstairs? It's kind of like a beat it, but take your ice pack and go rest. So she's very aware. She's very emotional, and like kisses where I'm hurt. She'll kiss my hip a lot, or like cradle it. And so, you know, my mom had really bad chronic pain too, and she could have easily. So my mom's passed. My mom passed away 10 years ago. But, I remember being really afraid of her pain, really afraid.
Mhm.
And I don't want Harper to be afraid of mine. And I try to talk about the things that we do to help ourselves. And when it comes to meditation, really, so I was 4 months pregnant when COVID started, and all my classes that I taught all over Los Angeles became virtual. I had tons of virtual Reiki clients. And so with her in my belly, I was doing so much energy healing and so much breathing, and mantra meditation became like my thing, which I did throughout my labor as well. And it kind of just like, we didn't even really talk about it. I always had my sound bowls out and all my crystals, and just let her play with them. Like I came to terms with things were going to break, but I want her to have that curiosity and wonder and have access to them, and play with them. And so, yeah, I don't even know the belly breath. Like, she was so young right there. I think she was 2, and in that video, she's taking a few deep breaths, has crystals all on her chakras. And she says, Mama, breath. And I go, you want me to take a deep breath? And she goes, yeah. And so then I take a deep breath with her. And when I drop her off at school, she's like, I hope you have a great meditation. I go teach meditation a couple days a week, and I think she thinks I'm meditating like the whole time she's gone. I'll pick her up from school. How was your meditation, Mama? Did you teach the grown-ups? And so, I love that. It makes me happy. I love that she wants to play the sound bowls, and she learned how to Om really young, and we love to Om together. So, I just want her to explore any and all of it. I wasn't raised with any religion. I was raised on Star Wars. The Force, my dad would be like, whatever you need is within you, like the Force, like in Star Wars. And so that's like literally what we grew up with. And like, I want her to know that, like, whatever she needs, she has it, or we'll be there to help support her in that. But really, for me to like, meditation is my prayer. Meditation is my connection to whatever it is. Like, I don't know. I don't believe in God, but I believe in something much bigger and greater than myself. And I know I feel so much more connected to that through meditation, like when I'm out on a hike or under the Tetons, or even just out on a walk on the trails here with my dog. It's like, I just feel something so magical and present.
Mhm.
And my practice keeps me in touch with that. Yeah.
And you said about Harper, you're like, I don't want her to be afraid of my pain.
Mm.
How do you want Harper to feel about her pain?
I don't want to say inviting, but like, well, it depends on what kind of pain, because it's like, if it's heartbreak, when she's a little bit old or a lot older, and, like, I want her to feel everything, even if it's really hard to witness,
Mm-hmm.
because, I remember once I broke a boyfriend's heart. I made a really big mistake. It was very selfish. And I called my dad crying, and he said, "I'm so glad you finally fucked up." And I've always kept those words with me because when I lived with my dad, I was such a perfectionist and wanting to make everybody happy. And, while I was like experimenting with drugs and alcohol at a very young age, I wasn't the kid who was like outwardly rebelling. It was like quiet, but I was still, a good, like, I did horrible in school, but I was a very nice student. Like, I was a nice friend.
Behaviorally, yeah.
I did well in gymnastics. I did well in snowboarding. Like, I kept the act up. Like, I always had this facade. And so, like, those words, "I'm so glad you finally fucked up." It's like, I want Harper to know that no matter what, she's always loved. Whatever, she does, whatever mistakes she makes, like, she's loved, and whatever pain she's having, she'll be held and supported. And, we always need that reminder, even though we're like, ugh, when people are like, "It gets better, I promise." You're like, yeah.
Yeah. I have this friend, when you said that, it just reminded me, a really close friend of mine, Jana, and she's in her 60s, and we've been, really close for a while. But I remember when I moved back to America from Austria and then spent a lot of time in Southern California, which is where she lives. I remember just expressing things to her that were hard and uncomfortable and that were a struggle for me, and expressing emotions. And she has, a story, not the same as yours, but still as much of like a, "Oh, are you fucking kidding me?" Like that type of past and things going on. And I remember when I would express some of these things to her, she'd be like, "You're doing such a great job. And I'm so excited for you. I'm just so excited for you." And I remember being pissed when she would say that. I'd be like, "What do you mean you're excited for me? Like, this sucks right now." But what I now know is like, on the other side of that pain, on the other side of that obstacle or that hard moment or that heartbreak, on the other side of the fuck up, like your dad said, is so much magic and is so much learning and growth and everything that you need to keep evolving and keep growing and keep, leaning into that future version of yourself, that higher version of yourself. But I remember when she would say that in the moment, you're like you said, when people are like, "Oh, it's going to get better." And you're like, "All right, cool. Thanks for the feedback. See you later." Like go on, but she would do that to me too. There was like such excitement and this joy in her eyes, knowing that I was struggling and suffering, and not because she wanted me to be there, but she knew what was on the other side of that. And she had been through so much and gotten on the other side of that too. But when you said that, it reminded me of that. So I'm really grateful for Jana and all the encouragement and wonder and excitement that she had while I was going through, a really hard time, a really hard
I
time.
really like Brene Brown's talks on shame,
Mm-hmm.
and
Love
this
her.
is something I'm continually experiencing. I think even on your posts, like, you're like feeling a little shameful of like being in this mess. And I'm like, hey, I'm here too with you. Like, and I needed you to write what you did to also feel okay. And I remember when I got clean, I often spoke at meetings all over LA. And I had just found out that day that I did something like, really, I was so disgusted with in my using, that when I was in a blackout before I ended up in rehab. And I was so disgusted and ashamed. And I got up and I spoke about it in front of 150 people. And afterwards, this younger girl, because I was like 28, 29. This younger girl came up to me and just started crying. And she's like, I've never told anybody, but I did the same thing. And I needed this tonight. And it was like, oh, like that was my first real, like, and with feeling alone in moments with chronic pain, it's like, while there's nothing you can really do for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the best thing I have found is community. So I'm a part of this like Facebook group, right? And I've met some really wonderful, amazing friends who have it, and we support each other, or we commiserate, or offer our experiences and what has helped us through some period or another. And now it's like, I feel so lucky that I found these practices to help with my pain, because I am that person that's like, okay, I wasn't this way with meditation, obviously, but before that, anything I'll try, right? Like whether it's acupuncture, different herbs, or just whatever, give it to me. I can help other people who are going through what I am, so like a lot of my private clients are people with chronic and acute pain and illness. And that feels like, to help others find relief from something that can feel like it's stealing your life. It's your higher power. Like for years, pain was my higher power. I talked about this on Kristen Birdwell's podcast, that I even did the 12 steps once around pain being my higher power. And, to see people like release it and lose that fear is just like, it's the best work. Mm-hmm. I love my job. Like, I can't believe I get to do this. And, sometimes it's the simplest suggestions too. I had a girl in my meditation class the other day, and she was like, oh my God, I'm spinning out. I really need this. Thank you so much. She kept thanking me before it even started. I'm like, no, it's here. I'm like, I'm glad you're here. And then I was like, okay, just so you know, you can lay down, you can move around during the practice, like whatever you need to do. And she's like, I can. And I said, yeah, this is your time to nourish your body. So do what you need for it. Like if there's other people in the class, you have to be mindful of noise. But if you need to shift into comfort, do that. And she was like, that just changed my life. And it's like such a small to me, but I didn't know that either, because I have pain. Like I've been squirming around sitting here talking to you while I'm teaching. I am like stretching my hip out and moving because I can't sit there. And when I meditate, if I don't make it my own practice, and like my teacher David G always says, comfort is queen, I'm going to focus on my throbbing hip or my lower back pain. I'm not going to pay attention to where I'm supposed to be guided to. And so, just being able to offer such small solutions to like change somebody's view on meditation and how simple it can be is great. Love it. Like, it's like
the permission slip. You're like, with you telling your story in that instance where that girl came to you, it was like her permission slip to then share hers, right? And then I think maybe people listening too, it's like you think you go to a meditation class or whatever and you can't move and you just have to sit there and, and like then you move around, do what feels good for your body. Like this is for you. It's not about doing it right. It's about doing it and showing up.
Making that time, like, okay, if you're going to make the effort to show up here, make it worthwhile.
Make it what you want it to
don't
be.
leave it like, that meditation was awful because I couldn't move. My body was hurting so bad. That was an awful meditation. It's like, I don't want that experience for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. One last thing, because I know I always tell myself if one person is impacted by this episode, that's what we're doing. Like, that's why we're here. Because that one person could have been you or me or anyone. And so if somebody's listening that does have chronic pain, what would be like one piece of advice or one thing that you would suggest that they lean into or discover? Would it be meditation? What would that next best step for the person listening thinking, okay, and where do I start?
The first, really most important thing is that you are your own best advocate. Like, if you, with all your heart and gut, know something is wrong and feels off, continue fighting for finding an answer and a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means bringing somebody with you to support you in doctor's appointments too, which is something I would bring my dad as much as I could. Always, keep fighting for yourself. Like, use your voice. It's your body. You know it best. And, through that, finding a doctor that listens to you. And then I really suggest, yes, meditation and listening to guided meditations to start. I think guided meditations, and they can be 5 minutes long, like that. You got to start somewhere, and 5 minutes can like change your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes I just do like the 16-second breath or a box breath, right? A few times. And I'm like, okay, I feel better than I did before that. So, there's so many great meditation apps out there. Some of them are free. You can type in pain in the search box or whatever you're going through, illness, maybe it's loss, a different kind of pain, and find a meditation or a teacher whose voice really resonates with you. Don't stop after the first one if you don't like that voice. Find somebody else, because there's a teacher for everybody. If you want to meditate with me,
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
How do they meditate with you?
Yeah.
What apps? How do they connect with you?
I'm on the Unplug meditation app, and I have 4 meditations for pain. I think they're anywhere from like 8 to 16 minutes long. So none of them are extremely long. You can lay down in your bed, put pillows everywhere, get as comfortable as you want. And just learn to breathe into your body, breathe all the way down into your belly, fill it, learn to guide your breath. I like to imagine my breath is swirling golden light, like stardust spinning through my body. And I just breathe it into different body parts where I'm hurting. And then I imagine that my exhale is carrying it away. And I do that with a thought that I don't like, or like I was having a lot of judgment recently and I didn't like that part of me and it felt really bad and yucky. And so I was really trying to exhale and let go of judgment, things that aren't serving us. So connect to your breath. That's all you need, really, is like the willingness to be quiet for a little bit, nourish yourself, and breathe into wherever your body's calling for it.
Thank you for you, Jenn. I love you so much.
Thank you.
And this conversation, I know has been healing for somebody out there listening. It for sure has been for me. I'll put all the links to how to connect with Jenn in the description. Check out her meditations in the Unplug app. Connect with her everywhere. And
I'll send you, so you can put that in there. I have a link for 30 free days on the Unplug app, and you don't have to put a credit card number in or anything. So you can just try those 30 days and go from there.
Perfect. We need that for sure. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Jenn. And we'll see you at the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Self Love and Sweat, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or were inspired by it or something resonated with you, do me a favor and share this episode with a friend, someone that you think might enjoy this episode as well. That's the ultimate compliment and the best way to make this podcast ripple out into the world of others. And also, you can leave us a review up to 5 stars wherever you're listening to the podcast. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you at the next episode. I appreciate you.